Hello fellow Clashers, it is KairosTime, and today we're going to be doing another episode of Exploring the Meta. Now it has been a long time since I have done one of these episodes, and the reason why isn't because I don't love them, it's because the meta has been all over the place. It's been absolutely crazy. I feel like every time I looked at one thing, something else was coming up, and every time I felt like I was ready to do another video, it was already changed. It was just crazy. Anyway, so today we're going to be doing episode 11, January 2017, Rise of the Elite Barbarians. So today's video is going to be very different than like any other video I've ever done, and also unlike any video that the vast majority of Clash Royale YouTubers are doing. It's actually a slideshow presentation, which I don't know how I feel about it. You guys will have to let me know what you think about it. But today we're going to be covering new cards and how they've influenced the meta, cards that are very popular and that are important to counter, and then popular decks, as well as some fun decks to try that are range anywhere from very meta to off meta and anti-meta. So let's go ahead and start out with talking about new cards. The first one is the Tornado. The Tornado is a very interesting card, very high skill level is involved in using the Tornado, and because of that, it's not influenced the meta a whole lot. People still haven't learned the best ways, despite very popular YouTubers like Orange Juice doing great guides on how to use it. It's just not grabbing on. So I think that it'll become more popular as people get more experience with it, and also as people's epics get closer to the tournament standard. So that'll be interesting. I love seeing a good Tornado user in the arena. Next is the Clone Spell. Also has not influenced the meta a whole lot. There were a couple of days when Lava Hound clones were very popular, but those got shut down pretty easily with the Elite Barbarians that were coming out, because you can go on the opposite lane and very difficult to stop. Elite Barbarians, obviously this is one of the, this is the meta right now. It really is. Maybe not so high usage rates in the very top 100, but in regards to tournaments and even in the ladder and on your way up to the top 100s, Elite Barbarians are being used all of the time. So we'll be talking about that. Then finally, we also have the Electro Wizard, a legendary, and so not a whole lot of people have it, despite the Electro Wizard challenge, which was very difficult to get that 12 rounds in there. The Electro Wizard is not influencing the meta a whole lot. It's very easy to counter it with just a simple fireball, but at the same time he adds a lot of utility that other cards do not, and so he's a lot of fun, mostly a great defender, and can be turned into a good runner if you have the right deck for it. So very interesting. So let's go ahead and talk about the most popular cards that are being used right now. A lot of this is taken some inspiration from Woody's Reddit posts, his popularity snapshots. Definitely check his channel out, as well as his Twitch channel. He does some streams every now and then, but his Reddit posts are very excellent in talking about the top 100 players and what kind of cards they're using along with the decks. So I did put my own little spin on here, because I'm seeing some different things where I'm in my trophy range, but also in challenges I'm seeing some different things. So I want to talk about some of those things. So obviously spells, we have Zap and Fireball. These are the two spells that you want to watch out for. Make sure that either Zap or Fireball does not counter your deck in a major way, or that it only counters a part of your deck. And what I mean by that is having multiple cards that are countered by the Zap or the Fireball, so your opponent has to choose very wisely how they're going to stop you. As far as support cards, we've got the Ice Golem, the Meta Minion, and then we also have the Archers and the Skeleton Army. All of these cards are excellent. The Ice Golem has a ton of utility. The Meta Minion is very strong, has been used a lot in the meta for a very long time, ever since it was first released, because of how strong it is. The Archers rose to popularity because of the Mega Minion. Really, they are so good at countering the Mega Minion and making for a neutral elixir trade, but since your Archers are still alive, then really your opponent still has to do some type of an answer to your Archers, unless they're okay with a little bit of tower damage, which sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad for you. So the Skeleton Army, very popular cards, used a ton right now, and because they do such a good job at countering so many different win conditions, like the Elite Barbarians, the Giant, the Golem, even if you use them correctly, or even the Hog Rider and the Royal Giant. So great card to be having in your deck. I love having the Skeleton Army in there, especially because they got that recent nerf or buff. Win conditions Now, these weren't in the top 100 decks, but I've been seeing a ton of these. We've got the Elite Barbarians, which are all over the place. Elite Barbarians in themselves are a good win condition. You can do Elite Barbarian cycle decks, but a lot of people have some good counters to the Elite Barbarians right now. So Elite Barbarian cycle decks aren't what I'm seeing a whole lot of right now. What I'm seeing them with is paired up with another really strong win condition like Royal Giant or the Giant or Bowler or Graveyard or the Hog Rider, which is my next choice right now. I'm seeing a lot of Hog Riders in the deck right now. It seems like a fast-paced control archetype is really starting to step into the meta, which personally I love control archetypes. It was the first archetype that I really got to learn and will always be dear to my heart. Lastly, we have the Graveyard. Now, the Graveyard is a very popular win condition, even in the top 100, and I definitely have to talk about it because you have to have a strong way to counter against the Graveyard or you're going to struggle. Because it's a legendary, not everybody has it, but it's been out for a long time, and so plenty of people do. You have to watch out for it. As for defense, the winner goes to the Tombstone. The Tombstone does a great job at stopping all sorts of different decks or win conditions really, and so it is very popular. So these are our most popular cards. If you're going to create a deck, make sure that you have a way to answer to at least the majority of these cards. I highly recommend having a counter to both the Elite Barbarian and the Hog Rider because of how common both of them are. That gives you a good positive elixir trade or advantage. Now, popular decks. These are the top 3 decks that were used in the top 100 during the Woody's popularity snapshot. Because of that, you're going to be seeing these all over the place. Top 3 decks in those snapshots get used by a lot of people, and they spread around like wildfire. So make sure that you are aware of these, and if you want to jump on the bandwagon, then please do. And if you don't, make sure that you know how to counter them. So first of all, we have the Bowler Graveyard Freeze deck, which is a very strong one. It utilizes the Ice Golem as a secondary tank for that graveyard to really cause some pain for your opponent, as well as the Bowler, which is so strong at defending against so many different types of pushes, including the Elite Barbarians. Now, that freeze is great if you have a really good elixir advantage. You can freeze whatever your opponent uses to try and stop your graveyard to get some really good extra damage and maybe even zap what else they use to try and counter it. This next deck is a Spellbait deck that utilizes the Mirror, in fact, to try and get some extra damage onto your opponent's tower, usually with the Goblin Barrel. It also utilizes the Furnace, which is a very tanky card. It's just like surprisingly tanky. You don't expect it, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh man, there's so much health. And then we also have the Princess on here that is going to add for a great defense, but also a great way to get a very, if your opponent's tower is down below 150 damage, the Prince is a great way to finish that off, as well as the Log and the Fireball as well. Now, this last deck is a very fast-paced Hog Rider cycle deck. You can cycle back to that Hog Rider extremely quickly, and you have things like the Skeletons, as well as the Ice Spirit, the Ice Golem, and the Mega Minion to make for a great way to trade against your opponent when they're attacking you, and you can make some great elixir advantages. The one fallback to this deck is that if you make mistakes and you spend more elixir than your opponent does, you're going to have a very difficult time stopping a massive push. Now let's talk about some fun decks to try. The majority of these are submitted by the Kairos Kingdom members, and we've got all sorts of different things. So this was submitted by Leoxim. It's a very meta deck. It has a lot of very popular cards in there. In fact, the only one that is not popular is the Cannon. He's at 3856 trophies right now. The great thing about this deck is that you can cycle between the Hog Rider and the Elite Barbarians to really try and catch your opponent off guard if they only have a counter to one of them. This next deck was submitted by Gary. It's a meta-ish deck where we use the Royal Giant, which has kind of been decreasing in the meta, except for those few people that have overleveled it so much that they feel like they have to stick to the Royal Giant deck. But it also utilizes the Elite Barbarians that are going to help for a very fast counterattack when you need to defend against something. We also have that Lightning to try and get rid of strong defenses like the Inferno Tower, as well as deal some damage onto your opponent's tower. He's just barely below 4,000 trophies, so this is a strong deck, especially because he's at that high with only level 10 Royal Giant. I asked him about that, and he said that he could not level it up to a level 11 or higher without with a good conscience. So there's that. We also have Christoph here, who submitted a giant bowler deck, kind of like the very popular giant bowler poison deck that we saw a lot of a few metas ago, but utilizes the fireball. Not super meta, but it is kind of meta-ish in the fact that we have the archers and the mega minion, as well as the fireball and the tombstone. He's at 4,100 trophies with these card levels, so this is a good deck to try out. This was submitted by Tyler Durden. It's a very off-meta deck where the only real meta deck in there is the Hog Rider. You have the rocket to try and get some extra damage onto your opponent's tower, as well as the miner to clear enemy defenses or other things, maybe even get some chip damage in there. The knight is the surprise card. People aren't super aware of how to get rid of the knight, and so you use him to try and catch your opponent off guard. He's just below 4,100 trophies with this deck. It's a great deck to try out, especially with that furnace is a very great defense as well as some constant pressure. Gen Dokeshi submitted this deck with level 7 rares other than his Hog Rider. He's at 3,700 trophies. This is a fun one to try out, especially with that mini P.E.K.K.A to counter those Elite Barbarians, as well as that Inferno Tower to stop massive pushes. General NX posted this anti-meta deck. Now, it's anti-meta in the fact that it is not like the meta at all. People are going to be very surprised when you drop that P.E.K.K.A, but really the big surprise is that wizard. You place that wizard as a defense, and the wizard becomes a runner. Kind of, well, a runner really is basically when he goes from defense to offense, and use that runner to once he gets to the bridge to drop that graveyard. Now, this deck is very similar to bowler decks, but you do have that P.E.K.K.A right there, as well as the furnace to try and get some, to really put your opponent into a very difficult situation. He's at 4,000 trophies with a level 4 P.E.K.K.A and guard, so that's very excellent. We have Mateo, who submitted this deck. It is the P.E.K.K.A with the Hog Rider deck. In this deck, you're going to utilize the Princess and the Ice Wizard mostly on defense, as well as that mini P.E.K.K.A as well. And he's at 4,200 trophies, which makes this deck a very strong deck and a great one to try using. That minion horde is going to be great on defense, as well as the majority of these cards are. So really, you just cycle back to when you're ready to use your Hog Rider and then go for it. Josh submitted this deck, and I am in love with this deck. It is a ton of fun to use. It utilizes that Electro Wizard. I almost called it Zap Wizard. I did that in one of my tournament videos recently. So it utilizes the Electro Wizard, and really this is a Fireball bait deck. You want the Fireball to either take care of your Electro Wizard or the Elixir Pump, but make sure that they're not also be able to get rid of damage onto the tower that they want to get damage on. You want them to do it on those two cards so that your X-Bow is safe to really get some damage done on the opponent's tower. Definitely a fun deck to try out if you have the cards to do it. Now, this video is very different than any video that I've done in the past, so make sure you let me know how you like it. Make sure you like, subscribe, comment, and share this with all of your fellow Clashers so that they can get a good idea of what the meta currently is right now. And as always, Clash on, and this is KairosTime ticking by, and we will see you in the arena.